The Senate Judiciary Committee set a confirmation hearing for President Biden's pick for Attorney General Merrick Garland starting on February 22nd. Garland's the federal appeals court judge whom Republicans bypassed for a U.S. Supreme Court seat in 2016. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Alicia Bloss from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
The World Health Organization is still trying to figure out how exactly the coronavirus originated.
The delegation, which did not include American scientists, said at a press briefing in Wuhan, coronavirus is extremely unlikely to have leaked from a Chinese lab and most likely jumped to humans from an animal outside the lab. 5 days before leaving the State Department, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo quietly issued a fact sheet accusing China of deceit and disinformation, hinting the virus originated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology based on 3 pieces of partial evidence. Several lab researchers had COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019, research at the lab on bat coronavirus since 2016, and the removal of some of that research, along with new evidence of secret military activity at the Wuhan lab involving animal experiments.
That's Fox's Jennifer Griffin. Despite the Trump administration's claims, senior U.S. defense officials tell Fox News that they have not seen any intelligence to suggest that the coronavirus came from a lab in Wuhan, China. The search is on for a hacker who targeted a water treatment facility in Florida.
Somebody hacked into a computer at the water treatment facility in Oldsmar, Florida, a town of 15,000 on the north end of Tampa Bay, and it happened with the operator watching the screen.
Was able to take control of the operator's computer and change the sodium hydroxide, which is a lye used in drain cleaners, changed the level very dramatically.
Pinellas County, Florida Sheriff Bob Gualtieri says whoever did it used a remote access program to try increasing the amount of lye in the system by more than 100 times of what's safe. The hacker was thwarted, and the water is safe to drink. In Broward County, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
Asian stock markets are higher after Wall Street ended mixed, with the NASDAQ setting a new high. U.S. futures prices are trading higher. I'm Sal Giangrasso, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Half a day. This is Rocky Martinez, professional heavyweight MMA fighter. Nothing gets in my way when I go pro at Subway. Pack a punch with double the protein on any foot-long sub for just $2 more. For a limited time only. Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions. Featuring the latest special at Mezcla, Manopua, baked barbecue pork buns, Chinese-style barbecue pork in buttery pastry, $30 for a dozen. Call 479-2652 or 2653 to place your order.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day I start the program with that. It puts you on notice that this is a constitutional conservative radio program with a little bit of libertarianism thrown in. 888-825-888-TALK if you want to join the party. And and send your voice out to our international radio listening audience of tailgaters all over the world, or just post here on Facebook. Fine. Let's start out with Demi Ikotny. Before I dive into Demi Ikotny, I'm going to take just a minute to remind you that last week the Daily News ran a story. Oh boy, record low temperature set 69 degrees, a record. And I came online and said, no, it's a record for that day in history, but not a record. If you were to look at today's Guam Daily Post, you would find on the weather page, which is a really good weather page, by the way, much better than the Daily News, you would find that the temperatures for February 8th, that was on Monday, the high was 87, the low was 76, normal high is 85, normal low was 75, record high was 90 in 1989, record low was 65 in 1973. Wow! Yeah. So I think the Post cares a little bit more about accuracy than the Daily News, which seems much more interested in running boilerplate from Gannett News Service and USA Today. The farther to the left, the better. The more often Trump can be bashed, the better. And today, of course, they haven't run a local editorial forever and ever. And today their editorial is from the USA Today editorial board. And the title is, Don't Rush the Trial. As the prosecution of former President Donald Trump begins this week, it's difficult to conjure up a more damnable set of actions worthy of trial before the Senate. Trump stands accused of attempting to subvert the will of the people by inciting rioters to disrupt the electoral vote count by Congress on January 6th. I don't think that's what he tried to do. I mean, you can't construe his words to mean that. If he was trying to do anything, he was trying to influence the members of Congress to exercise their power to throw out the electors that had been sent by the various states, etc. He wasn't trying to stop the process. But, of course, this is the Daily News. It is USA Today. And then it goes on to say, precisely the kind of treachery that animated the impeachment solution the Founding Fathers crafted into the Constitution. Wrong again, Daily News. When the people turned to Joe Biden on Election Day, Trump said no, and his actions thereafter reveal high crimes that demanded accountability. You know, when you constantly do this, folks over there, USA Today, you're constantly trying to gaslight your readers. So if you came along and said, the sky is blue, you'd see most people looking out the window to check for themselves because they wouldn't believe you. So when It says, when the people turned to Joe Biden on Election Day, Trump said no, and his actions reveal high crimes that demand accountability. Contesting an election is not a high crime. It's clearly within the boundaries of acceptable law. You can challenge an election. And with respect to the Congress, you know, the members of the House and Senate who wanted to contest the election before the Congress weren't doing something wrong. They were doing exactly what the Constitution contemplates. And I try to pat myself on the back, but I'm just getting over my backache, so I better let it go for now. But I've been saying since 2000, since Bush beat Gore with a majority of the votes. If you'll recall, Bush beat Gore 5-4, a solid majority. I said then, and I've been saying it ever since, the Supreme Court had no business in that controversy. They brought great disrespect upon themselves and on the process. They should have stayed out, and the matter should have been settled by the Congress. That's where those kinds of election disputes go. So Trump, in attempting to take advantage of the remedies available to him, did not commit a high crime. This kind of logic is sort of like saying, well, you know, if a defendant pleads in a criminal case, pleads not guilty, and then later on he's found guilty, he should also be punished for perjury. Or if one person brings a civil suit against another person and loses, that should be adjudged a criminal act. When people take advantage of the various legal challenges available to them within the boundaries of that challenge, that is not a high crime. What a news organization. Now they go on to say, spreading the big lie. Beginning minutes after the polls closed on the East Coast, Trump claimed the election was stolen, and he spent the next 2 months filing dozens of lawsuits, strong-arming state officials to change the results, and plotting to replace Justice Department leadership to further his scheme. Dozens of defeats in court, including rulings by Trump-appointed judges, which makes a lot of difference, you know. If they'd have been Obama-appointed judges, well, then maybe he's got something to talk about. He spread the lie on Twitter and in rallies. They're not taking this White House. We're going to fight like hell. And in a last-ditch effort, he urged followers to assemble in Washington for a Save America rally on the day Congress would affirm the vote count. Be there, be wild, the president tweeted. Inciting insurrection, his most rabid supporters made their angry intentions known in a firestorm of social media posts before the rally. Trump would have absolutely no choice but to demand us to storm Congress and beat them. January 6th is going to be epic. The FBI warned of war at the Capitol, according to the Washington Post. And on the day of the rally, amid angry shouts to take the Capitol right now and fight for Trump, the president stoked their passions further with exhortations such as, stop the steal, take back the country, fight like hell, or you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue and we're going to the Capitol. Next item, dereliction of duty. As thousands stormed Capitol Hill and breached the building, defeating paltry numbers of police, Trump retreated to the Oval Office and watched on television. His supporters sized up the Senate and House floors, temporarily halted the vote count, and angrily hunted down elected leaders like Vice President Mike Pence and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, both of whom had been whisked to safety. 5 died, among them a police officer and a woman trampled to death. And the iconic Capitol was desecrated, including unfurling of a Confederate battle flag, something that had never occurred even in the Civil War. Came pretty close a couple times. Trump offered a tepid Twitter plea for peace, and more than an hour after the Capitol perimeter was breached, It was 3 hours before he put out a video calling on followers to go home. In his trial defense, Trump's lawyers say that since he's no longer president, it's unconstitutional to hold a Senate trial. Now, this is what USA Today says about that. An absurd conclusion, if true, allows any president a free pass to commit crimes in the last month of office. Well, crimes? Last month of office? The Constitution says what it says, not what you want it to say, USA Today. As James Madison urged in the Federalist Papers, the genius of Republican liberty seems to demand on one side not only that all power should be derived from the people, but those entrusted with it should be kept in dependence on the people. This means presidents are accountable for their actions from their first day in office until the last. What a throwaway sentence. Lawyers also argue that the First Amendment protects whatever Trump said on January 6th, though it's inconceivable that free speech safeguards allow inflammatory remarks that incite violence without penalty. Well, all you got to do is prove it. And you know, that I mentioned this the other day, there's something called the Prost hoc, ergo propter hoc logical fallacy. The reason that it's raining is because I washed my car. The reason that the mob stormed the Capitol is because Trump gave a speech. You got to tie it up a whole lot tighter than that before you can say that Trump incited insurrection. How will the trial unfold? It remains unclear given Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's willingness to proceed without a, quote, whole lot of witnesses. No sense proving up your case. To speed things up during a busy period for President Biden's legislative agenda. That would be a mistake. Senators need to hear from witnesses who can provide more detail about Trump's conduct in the Oval Office as the president watched the violence unfold. Preliminary accounts suggest that he was delighted. Some say that. Preliminary accounts, yeah. Trump stands accused of inciting an insurrection against his own government in attempt to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. Wrong. Something no other president has even entertained. This is more dictatorship than democracy. The trial shouldn't be a rush job. The nation deserves a full airing of evidence against this defendant and the opportunity to hold Trump accountable, no matter how long it takes. In other words, if you're going to have a show trial, you know, like they used to do in the Soviet Union, you have to, as our governor would say, milk it for all it's worth. Try to get as many people from the Capitol to come up and tell about their sad experiences. Get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to come in and take the microphone and tell us how she was afraid that she was going to die when that Capitol policeman came and knocked on her door. Classic. Classic USA Today. And unfortunately for us, classic Daily News.
Who holds them accountable for this trash that they write? This is incredible.
It is. Well, I guess it's us. We don't have to buy their papers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't buy USA Today. If we were talking about food, we'd be talking, you know, USA Today is kind of the McDonald's of journalism. Yeah. And now we come to the Post. The Post didn't want to trot out its fastball today, so we got another really feel-good story about two ladies who found built wallets and returned the wallets to the owners, and it's just a wonderful story. So let's see, we might as well give the ladies credit. One of them was Tommy Lorenza, and
Darby Tamson.
Darby Tamson. Okay, well, let's give him a hand, Jose. Yeah, good enough.
Wasn't this a front page article the day before?
It was, yeah.
It's recycling then. I
Yeah.
guess they're going green.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's nice. It's nice when people do that, but does it rate an editorial? I don't know. It doesn't rate a blue star, I can tell you that. Okay, let's go from there to the card. Oh, wow, I finished Demi Cudney and Real Joe, another Joe hasn't called yet? This is a miracle. Okay, so program notes for February 9. Yesterday, Chris Duenas' Bill 11 drew some favorable testimony from the business community, but the governor was mum. Then the governor counterattacked. I'll tell you why the governor is like the man who had a banana in his ear. When I get to that item on the card. Yeah. And then picking up with from yesterday, Judge Francis Gatewood might be reappointed, but no thanks to the governor. And again, I didn't get a chance to finish up Arger and Iriarte's proof of the old Mark Twain saying that youth is such a wonderful thing, it's a pity we waste it on the young. And then the ACLU has filed for an injunction. I think I already covered that. But I never got to the new comedy team. Remember, we were talking about all the old-time comedy teams, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Rowan and Martin, Martin and Lewis. We've got a new comedy team, Sabina and Tello. And they're trying to put Ghostbusters out of business. I'm going to cover that today, too, if I get to it. And the Democrats have introduced a constitutional amendment that would allow an ex-president with a crappy personality to be burned at the stake. Yeah, guess who they had in mind when they put that one in place? Okay, so first item on the card, the governor versus Chris. Actually, yeah. So yesterday, we covered the public hearing where the three people came and testified. John Duenas, a lady from the Real Estate Association, and the president of the Chamber of Commerce. They were all in favor of the bill. Several senators spoke in favor of the bill, et cetera. No testimony was submitted by the governor, and no one from the governor's office appeared, leading us to think, well, maybe the governor just doesn't want to get involved. Well, a little bit later yesterday afternoon, the governor fired off her counterattack. And that was covered in the Post. Governor Leon Guerrero said a bill that seeks to shift the power to extend public health emergency declarations from the governor to the legislature would likely unnecessarily slow responses to imminent public health threats, such as Wuhan virus, and said it violates the separation of powers doctrine. I do not support Bill 1136, the governor said in her written testimony. Senators heard oral testimony on Senator Duenas' proposal Monday, while others, such as the governor, sent their testimony in writing. Leon Guerrero said the bill is disguised as an attempt to restore the separation of powers, but it is actually, in actuality, an attempt at legislative overreach. Current law, she said, already allows the legislature to end a declared public emergency where the public health threats in the legislature's own estimation have subsided. Now is not the time to gamble with our future. If it were, we would hold public hearings at the airport instead of at the legislative hall. Leon Guerrero said if the legislature believes that the pandemic is over and that the efforts of frontliners are somehow exaggerated or contrived, Now, who would ever say something like that when the director of public health came out and said there will be no sacramental services? Who would ever say something like that? A statutory mechanism already exists to check the executive's declaration of a public health emergency. She said, so she's playing chicken. She's trying to play chicken with the legislature, saying, you want to do it? Fine. Go find the Bob and Ray resolution and pass it. And then you won't need your Bill 11. So I would see Chris Duenas and the supporters of Bill 11 as taking a more of a middle-of-the-road approach. They're not saying we don't want the declarations of emergency. We just want to know a little bit more about them. Guam has been under a state of public health emergency since the governor has been since March, and the governor has been extending the emergency declarations. Guam continues in a state of continues to battle the pandemic. So it has been 325 days that we've been in a state of emergency. 320.
We don't want to rush things, though.
No. The governor said attempts to characterize the government's response to Wuhan virus pandemic as arbitrary and capricious is an affront to those who have spent the better part of a year responding to the global crisis. No, Governor, it's not. It's an affront to you. No one has accused anybody but you, or Chris has not accused anybody but you of being arbitrary and capricious. I accused the director of public health of being arbitrary and capricious when she banned sacramental services. But Chris didn't pick up on that. And once again, I'm not going to make a list, but you remember the time that we had the roadblocks out on Marine Corps Drive? That was not arbitrary and capricious. That was a well-thought-out plan based on the fact that viruses cannot pass a Jersey bounce if it's properly in place on the highway. During that time, I sent a sunshine law request to Janela asking for the statistics. How many cars went through the checkpoint? How many were stopped? No statistics, no records at all. Not arbitrary and capricious. Bill 11, the governor said, is an attempt to insert the legislature into executive branch operations. Governor, where did you get all your magical powers? Wasn't that from Chapter 19? Isn't that a law? Wasn't that enacted by the legislature? So would it not be reasonable to say that what the legislature giveth, the legislature taketh away? If enacted into law, it would be the job of the legislature to determine whether or not to extend a declaration of public health emergency. The governor said, such determination would necessarily require that the legislature be directly involved in the operational functions of the Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services or any other executive branch agency. No. It would require that perhaps they come over and say their piece and the senators listen. During Monday's public hearing, senators heard support from the bill from business sector representatives. Most of the comments were the governor's decision to continue to prohibit bars and other nightlife business operations from reopening while allowing bingo parlors, game halls, and related businesses to reopen. The governor said policies are generated based on the most current available information regarding the virus and a coordinated critical mass of data and institutional memory from local and federal agencies. It may be easy for some in the legislature to describe my actions as during this pandemic as arbitrary and capricious. She's got a burr under her saddle there, doesn't she? I have to remember that for future shows. Jose, remind me that whenever I mention the governor, I use the words arbitrary and capricious.
Always.
Yeah. Let me assure you that the authority of the Organic Act is granted the office of governor to protect the public health comes with an equally substantial obligation, one I carry heavily every day of this pandemic that passes. Do we start the martyrdom of Lulian Guerrero now, or wait? I was going to say, or wait until the pandemic is over. I might not be around that long. I figure I only got 10 or 15 more good years. Yeah.
That's a little conservative.
Yeah. Okay, so I have the governor's testimony here, and I just want to comment on a few parts of it here. She starts out by talking about Chapter 19, our emergency plan, the source of her emergency powers. She said, Guam, the Guam Emergency Health Powers Act is based on a model state Emergency Health Powers Act drafted by the Center for Law and Public Health at Georgetown and Johns Hopkins. You know that because I told you that way back. At the request of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Adopted in some iteration in over 30 states, it was designed to enable the government to act quickly to address impending public health threats to the community. Okay, let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to the governor's letter to Therese Terlahi, the speaker.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Looking for a place to celebrate this Valentine's Day? Treat your special someone to Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña. Enjoy their Sweethearts menu that comes with complimentary sparkling wine, house wine, or draft beer, and a choice of 3 tantalizing set menus created by Master Chef Peter Dueñas, and an irresistible warm melting chocolate lava cake with creamy vanilla ice cream. Let Mezcla serve you up a memorable evening with the true taste of Guam. Call Mezcla at 479-2652 or 3. Limited seating available.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So, according to the governor here, the Emergency Health Powers Act was designed to enable government to act quickly to address impending public health threats to the community. Impending. Are we dealing with an impending threat? No. The threat's already here. It's been here for over 300 days. I could understand having to act quickly way back in the very beginning when we weren't quite sure what we were dealing with, how to deal with it, etc. But, it's been around as long as, some of my socks. It's time to move on to something else. Moving on into the testimony, Bill 1136 was introduced with a purported intent to prevent the executive branch from acting in an arbitrary and capricious fashion in implementing its response to public health emergency, etc. Attempts to characterize our government's response to the pandemic as arbitrary and capricious is an affront to the men and women who spent the better part of the year responding to this global crisis. Yeah, let's bring them into it. And, we can play a little game here of victims and villains. Governor, you can be the victim, and some of the folks out there at Public Harassment and Secret Services, like the one that banned Sacramental Services, can also be the victims. And Chris Dueñas and the co-sponsors of the bill can all be the villains because they're doing something that Well, I suspect if all of the co-sponsors of the bill were lined up and the governor were asked, what should we do with these people, Governor? You know what she'd say, Jose?
Off with their heads.
Off with their heads. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Adopted, let's see, by design, the EHPA does not accommodate the much more deliberate process utilized by legislatures to craft policy through the adoption of law and the appropriation of funds. Now, remember, the EHPA gave the governor the ability to, in effect, temporarily repeal some of the laws. And remember, the very first law that she repealed was the open government law. We don't need no transparency. So, you know, when we go back over the history of this thing, Governor, it's not hard to find the words arbitrary and capricious jumping out at you and saying, oh, hey, here I am. And once again, just like the news story says, attempts to characterize our government's response to the pandemic as arbitrary and capricious is an affront to the men and women who have spent the better part of a year responding to this global crisis. Our response has evolved with the national and international COVID-19 landscape. We generate policy based on the most current available information regarding the virus. Governor, there's just not enough we in what you're doing. We don't know what you're doing, and we don't know who's involved. And when we do, we don't know what they're doing because everything comes from you when Janella will allow it to go through.
Sounds less like a victim and more like the vector.
The vector, yeah. And then she goes on to say, we generate policy based on the most current information as well as a coordinated critical mass of data that's set from local and federal agencies, and then she lists some of them. As an example, the Physicians Advisory Group.
Who? Not WHO.
First base. Yeah. The Physicians Advisory Group. And of course, we don't know when they meet. We don't know where they meet. Certainly, there's no cameras or microphones there when they meet. We don't know what they decide because the governor, you just use them for cover. You are fond of saying, well, the Physicians Advisory Group advised me that I should say that not allow anybody go to the beach until the next day you say, I never said that.
Sounds capricious.
Yeah, it's very sensitive. Yeah. And then, of course, we remember poor old Dr. Gwen waking up in the morning with a horse's head at the foot of his bed because he contradicted. He said he contradicted what you said that the Physicians Advisory Group had said. So if you have these people, if you have a Physicians Advisory Group and they meet in public and it's televised and reported, etc., you know, you would really let the air out of Bill 11. But you haven't done that. It's all behind closed doors. It's all just do what I tell you to do because I'm the governor. And now we get into governor as the martyr. She says, I personally spend countless hours meeting with these entities, Surgeon Cell, Guam Memorial, Physicians Advisory Group, etc., and their representatives on a weekly basis. These meetings result in on-the-ground changes to protocol based on unanticipated developments as they rise. Oh, yeah, the groups here. Let me go through the list of groups here. Physicians Advisory Group, let's see, DPHS doctors, contract tracers and epidemiologists, the Physicians Advisory Group, the Guam National Guard and its Surgeon Cell, the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority, the Guam International Airport Authority, the Guam Police Department, a designated doctor from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Governors Association, Guam Homeland Security Office, Office of Civil Defense, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the Asan Village Bowling Team. Yeah, these meetings result in on-the-ground changes to protocol based on unanticipated developments, which we use to surprise you almost every time we make a change. And then she goes on to say, disguised as an attempt to restore the separation of powers, Bill 11 is actually an attempt at legislative overreach. If enacted into law, it would be the job of the legislature to determine whether or not to extend a declaration of public health emergency. Such determination would, and that was covered in the story, such comprehensive involvement in the executive branch operations would usurp the role of the executive branch and violate the very separation of powers the proponents of this bill claim they want to protect. And she says, certainly governors should be held accountable for their actions, but not her, as just in general. It may be easy for some in the legislature to describe my actions during this pandemic as arbitrary and capricious and to wish themselves into my position. Let me assure you that the authority of the Organic Act has granted the office of governor to protect the public health comes with equally substantial obligation, one I carry heavily every day of this pandemic that passes. Poor governor. I personally call the families of all the Guamanians who've lost their lives to this disease. It's the least I could do. Yeah. Poor Lou, having such a hard job. She never wanted this, you know. She was just drafted. You know, when the pandemic came along, everybody said, Lou, you're a nurse. You should take over. You should do this. I feel an intense responsibility to implement policies that would protect our most vulnerable from those among us who feel no such responsibility.
Is she addressing the ACLU case here?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We're still on COVID.
Yeah, unborn children, no, we're talking COVID, who are willing to sacrifice the health of our elderly or vulnerable to perpetuate a false narrative that the island is somehow immune from the devastation of the Wuhan virus has wreaked on the world. I feel a responsibility to our frontliners who bear the greatest emotional burden of this crisis. Yeah, that's where the music comes in, right? We have seen other jurisdictions believe they have defeated this disease, most recently New Zealand, only to experience a resurgence in positive cases. We must be cognizant of our limitations. We must behave as though we cannot afford another wave of positive cases, because that is the truth. Now is not the time to gamble with our future. But if the legislature believes that the pandemic is over and that the continued tireless efforts of our frontliners are somehow exaggerated or contrived, the legislature can end the public health emergency. A statutory mechanism already exists to check the executive's declaration of a public health emergency. Under 10 GCA 19405C, the legislature may terminate a declared public health emergency where the public health threats in the legislature's own estimation have subsided. So she's playing chicken. She says, you don't like the way I'm doing things? Then take away all my magic powers and I'll just stay up at Government House and not do anything. And that's not what anybody in this whole lash-up is saying. Governor, this is what they're saying. And before I tell you what they're saying, I'm going to tell you about the man with a banana in his ear, because that's you, Governor. You are the man with the banana in his ear. Okay, here's a setting. A man is walking down the street with a banana sticking out of his ear. Another guy approaches him and he says, pardon me, sir, but you've got a banana in your ear. And the guy says, I can't hear you. I've got a banana in my ear. Lou can't hear what the people are saying. She's the one with the banana in her ear. She can't hear the Tom Pinehoffs and all the other people on the island who are saying, what you're doing, Governor, doesn't make sense. You're ruining the economy. You're ruining my life. You're ruining my business. And you're doing all of this stuff in such a manner that we don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it. And to which Lou says, I can't hear you. I've got a banana in my ear. In other words, like the guy with a banana in her ear, she knows that. She knows what it is that she's not doing, but she doesn't care. It would be too much trouble to take the necessary efforts to explain to the people, this is the reason that I put those stupid checkpoints out on the road. That's probably not a very good example, because there was no reason. She doesn't take the opportunity to say, I hear Tom Pinehoff and these other guys. She doesn't take any of these opportunities. It's just that we are told, and then when she does open things up, she gives the restaurants like 2 days notice, like they can get everything all together in 2 days. So it's classic arbitrary and capricious action. It's classic lack of feeling for the people that you're supposed to be governing. You're tone deaf, Governor. You're not paying attention to what a lot of people, or most of the people, are saying about the way you're handling this. That's the problem. It's not that the legislature wants to jump in the middle of it, but because you keep extending these executive orders for another 30 days, and you do it in such a manner, it's not, my dear people of Guam, mani luhod and mani naho, peo sangani hamzu todos ni otro na emergency. You don't do that. It's more like, where's my pen? I got to sign another declaration of emergency. It's just, it has become so routine and pro forma. Oh, is it the 29th day already? Okay, let me sign another one. Without explaining to us why you keep doing this, what the purpose of it is, what you're trying to achieve. Do you have an end game, Governor? Have you planned this out? Is there a plan in front of you? Or are you just taking it executive order by executive order, emergency by emergency? That's the way it looks to us. So here's something that you could have done, Governor, if you didn't have that banana in your ear. When you saw that public hearing and when you saw Chris Duenas' bill, you could have sent a note. You could have sent a note to the legislature and said, I understand what you're doing with Bill 11, and I respectfully urge you not to pass it. If there have been shortcomings in my ability to communicate with your august body, let's have the speaker and I will sit down and we'll work out a communications plan so that you're always kept up to date as to what's going on. And I'm going to establish a council to take into consideration those who have a hard time making their voices heard, bar owners, etc. I've said this so many times, we're all in this together, and I mean it. And by that I mean we'll all work through this together. The governor could never do that. The governor would, the governor is not very tall. She's not as tall as I am, that's for sure. Of course, nobody's as tall as I am. Yeah. So, when you're a relatively diminutive person, when you are kadada, it's even harder to climb down from your high horse. And that's where the governor is. She's perched on her high horse. And she could never make a conciliatory gesture towards the legislature, even in the face of what is absolute apparently absolute, not disrespect, but disappointment in what she's done and what she's doing and what everyone fears she's going to do. Well, let's take a short break, and I'll come back to the governor to try to help her off her high horse.
Introducing the fastest growing virtual kitchen on Guam. Ghost Table is a secret professional food prep and cooking facility set up for delivery-only meals. The menu is a collaboration of Guam chefs with a passion for creating great-tasting food. Choose from the Westside Hawaiian Grinds, 671 Burger, Side Street Tacos and Burritos, and Osaka Stop. Search for Ghost Table on Grab and Grub to check out the menu and to place your order. Satisfaction guaranteed. Exclusively with Grab and Grub.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Yeah, so that's my 2 cents worth. And if the governor can't see, if the governor, because she has that banana in her ear, is unable to hear people say, "Governor, you've got a banana in your ear," then I suspect that the legislature will pass Bill 11. And there's no reason why they shouldn't pass Bill 11, because they have a governor who's not going to work with them. So if she won't work with them voluntarily, they can pass Bill 11 and force her to work with them. And it appears, given the tenor of the governor's letter back, there's nothing conciliatory about it. It's about her. It's about the governor, how great she's doing, and by definition, how poorly the legislature is doing, and how the legislature is on the side of the Wuhan virus, serious illness, disease, whatever. Not a good performance, Governor. Not a gubernatorial performance at all. More like you'd expect to see from a group of high school girls who are playing the game of the clique. If you're not in the clique, we don't want you.
Are you saying the in crowd?
The in crowd, yeah. So if you're in the legislature, you're not in the in crowd. You don't deserve to know these things. You can't handle the truth. That's what the governor is saying.
Is this her Biden moment, calling for unity?
Yeah.
And then putting this letter out?
Yeah. Yeah, and then she should have signed off. Oh, and by the way, we're all in this together. We need unity. Okay, still picking on the governor here. Next item on the card is the governor versus Francis Gatewood. And I started this yesterday, but the governor is supporting the renomination of Francis Gatewood to be chief judge of the District Court of Guam. And I pointed out, hey, Governor, this guy, Mike San Nicolas in D.C., probably has more of a cut at who gets to be the next district judge than you do. So by you coming forward without having touched base with him and perhaps establishing a joint effort, you've done a couple of things. You haven't done Francis Gatewood any service, any favors, and you make us look like a bunch of bush leaguers out here in Guam. Back at D.C. and the Congress, that's the major leagues, and you're playing like a Class C ball player here, Governor. I'm going to beat Mike San Nicolas to the punch. I'm going to nominate Francis Gatewood to the president. I don't care what Michael San Nicolas does. And besides that, I'm going to have a photo op down at the Hakabotan building where I can have my picture taken with some old folks and with Francis Gatewood. It's worked for me before. Why not do it again? So that is a serious tactical blunder on the governor's part. And then going on again on the idea of let's not look like bush leaguers out here, okay? This is what the governor said. I humbly recommend that Francis Tydinko Wood be reappointed to serve as the chief district judge for the District Court of Guam, the governor wrote to the president. The governor touted Tydinko's experience and heritage. A daughter of Guam, Frances is the first woman of Chamorro and Micronesian descent to serve as a federal judge. How wonderful. I mean, that's the reason that we choose our judges, right? Sick. Frances is a hitter. She's a major leaguer. She's done very well. She was a prosecutor, a Superior Court judge, a Supreme Court judge. She's made her bones in a black robe. You don't need to go to this petty identity politics, although it worked for Biden's vice president, didn't it? I mean, that is degrading to Frances. It really is. I mean, to say, well, yeah, but she's the first Chamorro and the first Micronesian to be a federal judge. So what? How about saying she's highly qualified? Because the implication is the reason she's a judge is because she's Chamorro and Micronesian, not because she's qualified, right? And then they go on to say, after serving 25 years on the judicial bench for both Guam and Saipan, and 37 total years of public service, Francis's 10-year term as the chief judge of the district court. She's not the chief district judge, But, I mean, who's going to read this? Just people are going to say the same thing I am. What is a chief district judge? Of the district court expired on October 30, 2016, causing anybody to read this to say her term expired on 2016 and you're just now asking that she be reappointed?
Makes you think it was reactionary.
Something isn't quite right here. Yeah. Let's break for the big halftime show, and I'll come back to the governor and Francis Gatewood.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Day one disappoints the former president. I'm Sal Giangrasso, Fox News. Former President Trump was furious at what he saw in his attorney's performance on the opening day of his second impeachment trial, and some of his allies and Republican senators also questioned their strategy. The lawyers argue that impeachment of a former president is unconstitutional.
Common sense. Nobody thinks of using the impeachment process for anything other than removing a civil official from office. We have courts. If you want to have an investigation, you want to prosecute someone, something like that, we have the courts for that. That's not what an impeachment is for.
That's Trump's attorney David Schoen appearing on Fox's Hannity. But the Senate went ahead and voted to push the trial forward on a 56-44 vote, with 6 Republicans joining the Democrats in support of continuing the trial. It resumes Wednesday, and what might you see? A Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz says,
we're going to see this week a whole lot of Democrats pounding the table. We're going to see a lot of moralizing and a lot of really venting their hatred for Donald Trump. In case you haven't been paying attention the last 4 years, the Democrats really, really, really hate Donald Trump.
Cruz also spoke on Fox's Hannity. President Biden's making his first visit to the Pentagon as commander-in-chief. On Wednesday afternoon, he'll be taking stock of a military that's pivoting from the Trump years and focusing to an unusual degree on domestic and internal issues. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is calling the coronavirus pandemic a top priority. He's also ordering fresh assessments on how to root out sexual assault and extremism in the military's ranks. The Alabama prison system wants the FBI to help investigate a violent confrontation that hospitalized 2 officers and 2 inmates, including a well-known prison rights activist. Asian stock markets higher, and so are U.S. stock futures. Wall Street broke a 6-day winning streak, although the Nasdaq did hit a new record high. America is listening to Fox News.
You've heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every $1 spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores. Plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Alicia Bloss from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The White House says more vaccine doses are being sent out as the push to get a shot continues.
The Biden administration's pandemic response team says more COVID-19 vaccine doses are on the way. White House COVID-19 response coordinator Jeff Zients announced more allocations.
We will increase weekly vaccine doses going to states, tribes, and territories to 11 million. So that is a total of a 28% increase in vaccine supply across the first 3 weeks.
He also said starting next week, a program to directly send 1 million vaccine doses to 250 community health centers in underserved areas will begin. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
1 person is dead, 4 others wounded in a shooting at a Buffalo, Minnesota health clinic. 3 of the victims remained in critical condition Tuesday evening. A 67-year-old local man said to have been angry with the care he received was arrested. A National Transportation Safety Board report says the helicopter pilot who crashed, killing Kobe Bryant and all 9 people on board, likely was under self-induced pressure to deliver the star and his daughter, and 6 others, to a girls' basketball game. They say he ignored his training and violated flight rules by flying into conditions where he couldn't see and failed to take alternate measures. A food brand you grew up with has a new name.
The name Aunt Jemima, long criticized for racist undertones, will now be known as the Pearl Milling Company. PepsiCo, which owns the Quaker Oats brand, tells the story behind the new name. Pearl Milling Company was founded in 1888 in St. Joseph, Missouri, and was the originator of the iconic self-rising pancake mix that would later be known as Aunt Jemima. Quaker Oats updated its image over the years to remove racial stereotypes, and last year announced it was transitioning from the name and likeness on the packaging. The new name and logo is slated to appear on store shelves this June. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
And I'm Sal Giangrasso. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson stream of consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Great halftime show, especially the cannon fire at the end. So I'm going to come back here to the governor's not doing Frances Gatewood any favors. My approach is I would like to see Frances Gatewood reappointed. She's done pretty well. And, of course, as I mentioned so many times, if we ever got serious about what we're doing, we ought to be petitioning Congress to give us a life tenured district court judge, and we wouldn't have to be doing this. Puerto Rico has it. It's something we could get. It's not going to cost any of the states anything, but if we don't ask for it and work for it, we're not going to get it. And, of course, so many people over at the legislature, probably all of them, don't even know what I'm talking about. Life tenure for the district court judge? What's that? Can you eat it with chili?
How can I get me one of those?
Yeah. Okay, so once again, here's what the governor says. I believe Frances's judicial service has been exemplary enough to receive favorable consideration of reappointment by you for the people of Guam. What is exemplary enough? I didn't know that there were degrees of exemplary. Is it exemplary? Yeah, a little bit.
She just made it over the threshold.
Yeah.
It was her brown skin and gender.
I believe Frances's judicial service has been exemplary enough. You could say it has been exemplary, and it's a good example of excellence, right?
Or even more than exemplary, if you want to be
hyperbolic, yeah. But it's like perfect. You know, there are no degrees of perfect. Or I hear people saying, yeah, it was pretty unique. Unique, perfect, exemplary. There are no comparisons. By definition, they are the superlative. So I wonder again what the official back in the Justice Department who has to deal with these things thinks when he finds out that Frances is exemplary enough. She was appointed and not confirmed way back in 2006. Her most important credentials are that she's a Chamorro and Micronesian. and then that same guy is saying, I think they have a delegate. I wonder why he hasn't written to us. So I hope you get it, Frances, but the governor is not doing you any favors whatsoever. Okay, next item on the card. I started this before. This is a letter to the editor by a certain Agarin Ariarte. And Agarin Ariarte is, I'm going to characterize her here as an environmental wacko. And I pointed out that Agarin is from the village of Jigo, and he's currently pursuing a master's degree in sustainability. Yeah, from American U in Washington. He aims to return to Guam in the near future to help build a more sustainable island. That's great.
One that doesn't tip over.
Yeah, he's going to work with Hank Johnson on that one. So I'm picking this up, I think, where I left off. For over a decade, the price of renewables has fallen relative to the price of fossil fuels. Across the United States, government at the local and federal level are harnessing the power of clean energy to satisfy economic concerns as well as health and environmental issues. As the Biden administration begins to clamp down on fossil fuels and aims to create an economy built on clean energy and net emissions, where does that leave Guam? It's going to leave us in a big hole. You know, when Biden canceled the XL pipeline, what he basically did was send a note saying, folks on Guam, you're going to have to be paying more for gasoline and power. It's going to take a little while before it affects you, but it's going to happen. And as we get into this, let's use solar power instead of fossil fuels. I use the example the last time I talked about this that, you know, when Henry Ford invented the Model T in 1908, it didn't take very long before people caught on and said, man, this is a whole lot better than a horse. For one thing, you don't have to feed it when you're not using it. Horse you got to feed every day. Second, it was environmentally much more friendly. So it had everything going for it, right? It's probably even cheaper than horses when you take everything into consideration. So because of that, as soon as people caught on, 1911 or so, they said, we've got to go to transportation powered by internal combustion engines. No more of this horses and horse and buggy days. So they immediately killed every single horse in the United States because they wanted to use cars instead. Or, you know, before we discovered oil, that you could pump oil out of the ground somewhere in Pennsylvania, I can't remember where. The major household fuel was whale oil. That you'd burn whale oil in your lamps and use it for cooking and everything like that. So as soon as we could found out that we could drill a hole in the ground and pump oil out of there, much cheaper, much more economical than whale oil, what do? We went to all the whaling ports like New Bedford, etc., and we scuttled all the whaling boats and sent them straight to the bottom of the ocean because we said, we're going to convert from whale oil to petroleum now, today. None of this phasing in stuff. So Agarin goes on to say, as national and global policies move in the coming years toward a less polluting, greener economy, Guam faces high transition risks as asset values shift and a higher cost of doing business is imposed on polluting industries and communities. GPA knows this all too well after paying a $400,000 fine for violating national air pollution laws for power plants that were built long before there was a CCU. Our perpetual fluctuating fuel surcharge is tied to the price of fuel oil and the building of a planned $600 million power plant. No, it's not. Our fuel surcharge is not tied to that. $600 million power plant that exports taxpayer dollars and imports our sources of energy, exposing ratepayers to volatile commodity prices that lock us to a system that will be too costly to run. Now, I'm not going to air my appearance on behalf of the Power Authority, but Simon has been on talking to us a million times about the solar farms that they're building and how they're moving in that direction. And he's explained to us that we would never get to the point where we could rely only on solar power. We had Bob Kelly call up and tell us that you've got to have spinning reserve. So when the sun goes behind a cloud, there's no more power unless you have a spinning reserve, unless you have generators cranking out electricity into the grid. How else are we going to do that without burning oil? maybe we could get all of the guys that are measuring in sustainability to set up a treadmill down in Petey. So when the sun goes down behind the cloud, they can all get on this treadmill and keep it going, and we'll generate power. That way we won't be burning any fossil fuel. Solutions are available, but the reality is we do not have government leadership at the highest level working to develop a power grid that is lucrative and affordable. That's just wrong. I got to stick up for the CCU. That's just wrong. By scaling renewables and generating power locally, we can keep millions of dollars on island and generate hundreds of decent jobs. How do we generate the jobs?
Same way Biden's generating his green jobs.
Yeah.
Talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, when they canceled the XL pipeline, John Kerry said they could learn to code. Right? Yeah. With thousands out of work, there is no better industry or time to begin diversifying our economy. Let's see. Agaran Iriarte is from the village of Jigu and is currently pursuing his master's degree in sustainability management. Figures. The governor established the Climate Change Resilience Commission and the Guam Green Growth Working Group so that we can, quote, take care of ourselves. But they have been absent in conversations around energy sovereignty and affordability. He's got all the buzzwords down. I'll give him that. You know, he really lays out a nice readable paper. The fact that it really is short of a grasp of reality doesn't take away from its style. It's very stylish. But he goes on to say, both groups have an impressive roster of government, business, and nonprofit leaders and have much to contribute to the conversation beyond standard-bearing sustainability issues. Thus, sustainability goes a step further and must include economic, social, and governance imperatives. I guess he thinks he's writing a paper for his prof back at American U who's looking for all the right buzzwords. The approved rate increase in anachronistic power plant in Dadido achieves none of these goals, and we need strong and bold governance to overcome both. Well, maybe when you come back here with your sustainability degree, you can run for the CCU, Agaran.
One thing that's been sustained, the platitudes.
The platitudes, yes. Very, very good. Very good on the platitudes.
You know another thing about sustainability? This is just a play on words. This letter to the editor appeared originally in the Pacific Daily News. And I don't know if you're noticing that they're being put in the same one. And I don't know if they're asking that question anymore, or they're just looking for things to publish. But that's one way to sustain yourself. Give your letter to all the publications.
That's true. Yeah, it ran in the Daily News first, and then it ran in the Post. Okay, next I've got the ACLU versus us. Now we know that the ACLU has already filed suit based on what they hold is a too vague statute. So they have now applied for a preliminary injunction. What a preliminary injunction is an order from the court to the defendants to do basically what the plaintiffs have asked for until there can be a trial on the merits. And the classic example I can give you of when an injunction is a good deal is this. Let's say that out here on Marine Corps Drive, there is a banyan tree that's 250 years old and is humongous. Let's say that the trunk on that banyan tree is 15 feet in diameter and it's got the branches coming down, irreplaceable, 250 years old. And some guy comes along and wants to cut it down because he wants to build a hot dog stand there. And the friends of the trees come along and say, we don't want that tree cut down. We think this guy violated the permitting rules. And besides that, there's this priceless tree there. So we want an injunction, because if you don't issue an injunction, Judge, and the tree is cut down, the case is moot. There's no relief that you could give us. That's what injunctions are for, to stop an irreparable harm. I have a hard time seeing how an injunction would lie in this particular case, since that statute has been on the books since 1978. Yeah. Now, here's an interesting angle here. That statute was on the books in 1978. Senator Chong, it was part of Senator Chong Barrett's bill that legalized abortion in Guam. Yeah. In 1990, Bel Areola introduced her bill that made abortion illegal. The court, the Ninth Circuit, held that law was unconstitutional. So the rule is, and that law basically repealed the older law by implication. The rule is that when a statute is declared unconstitutional, it goes away, and the law in place before the unconstitutional statute springs back into existence. So that's how we're still dealing with that 1978 law. So it's not something that we did just because Jane Flores took over as Director of Women's Affairs and is out hunting for an abortionist. The statute's been on the books since 1978. And here it goes. In support of a motion for preliminary injunction filed this week, Michael Bavacqua submitted a declaration aiming to provide the federal court with the historical context of abortion in Guam, and stated Chamorro women have fought to maintain access to safe, legal abortions on the island. Now, there's a legal term that you apply to this kind of argument. It goes like this. So what? It's completely irrelevant. I might as well send an article to the court about the first pet dog that we had when I was a kid and how much I really liked that dog. The article goes on to say Hawaii physicians Shandhini Radu and Bliss Kaneshiro, represented by Guam attorney Vanessa Williams and the American Civil Liberties Union, stated in their lawsuit that Guam's abortion laws prevent them from providing telemedicine medication abortion. And I always check my Constitution when these things come up here. There is a constitutional amendment that says that all abortionists have a right, the government shall pass no law that would prohibit an abortionist from using telemedicine. Have you seen that, Jose? Yeah.
I'm still searching.
Where's that horn? Yeah. They sued the Attorney General, the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, and the Commission on Healing Arts of Guam. Bavacqua cited his research of Chamorro history, language, and culture, and research from Vivian Damas and Donald Rubenstein. Ensuring access to safe legal abortions is consistent with Chamorro values, culture, and history, Bavacqua stated. How interesting. Bavacqua summarized documented instances of abortion among Chamorros in the early 1900s. Now, this goes to my theory when the suit was first filed that was substantiated by remarks by Vanessa Williams. I said they're not really filing this to get a favorable ruling. They're doing this to coerce the legislature into changing the law. And my suspicion was confirmed when Vanessa Williams, attorney for the ACLU, came out and said, we really don't need the suit if the legislature would just change the law. So all of this pap, I'm going to smear this pap, right? This pap, Michael Bavacqua, is not, it will have absolutely no judicial effect whatsoever. But it is good fodder for propaganda to try to persuade the legislature. You know, if Tanjin tomorrow after Davidin Jamu abortion, you know, so historian tomorrow. And then a quote, with the current lack of access to legal abortion in Guam, the same concerns that animated opposition to the 1990 ban are once again relevant, Bavacqua said. In my opinion, okay, where's my gavel there, right? In my opinion, forcing people in Guam to travel several thousand miles to obtain care when access to safe and legal abortion can and should be made available on the island imposes a dignity harm on Guamanians. So ordered. Yeah, and once again, if the law is, if we can't make a legal argument, we'll go straight to identity politics.
Let's ask the Chamorro unborn children.
Yeah, and ironically, Tim has made this known before. Most of the abortions, a majority of the abortions are on unborn Chamorro babies.
What was the name of the senator who proposed the anti-abortion law in 1990?
Bel Areola.
Is she Chamorro?
Is
she woman?
This used to be the answer to that question, but it doesn't work anymore. Is the Pope Catholic? But that doesn't work anymore.
She doesn't count.
Yeah. Bell was very Chamorro. Yeah. Bel Camacho Areola.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but Bavacqua has come along now and ruled that it imposes a dignity harm on Guamanians. So anybody who is a Guamanian, if you want to sue, now you have a claim. You have a cause of action that this law imposes a dignity harm on you. I wonder, what exactly is a dignity harm? Since the last doctor who provided abortion services retired in mid-2018, no abortions have been reported to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, according to public health officials. What a tragedy. And of course, this was an emergency that our new governor jumped on like a duck on a June bug. She wanted to find an abortionist. She deputized Jane Flores at the Bois to go out and see if we could entice an abortionist to move to Guam. Article goes on, Guam law doesn't explicitly prohibit using telemedicine and medication abortions, but the ambiguous and outdated language of the laws effectively bar the doctors in Hawaii from using telemedicine to counsel and provide medication abortion to people here, Williams' memorandum said. So we have to set up our laws to accommodate doctors from Hawaii. That's what we're saying. Otherwise, how are they going to expand their market base, right?
That's undignified.
Yeah. Local law requires patients get information about abortion in person in a private room. The law also mandates all abortions be performed in a doctor's adequately equipped clinic or hospital. The recent court filing stated the clinic requirement in Guam's law was enacted before medication abortion was available. The plaintiff also stated the law doesn't differentiate between procedural abortions and medication abortions. I detect a certain similarity between procedural abortions and medication abortions. You know what that is, Jose?
No.
No matter which one you use, the baby winds up dead.
Every single time.
Yeah. Medication abortions are not procedures at all, but two medications self-administered by the patient over a period of 24 to 48 hours while the patient is outside the clinical setting, Williams' memorandum stated. Radu stated in a declaration that medication abortion typically involves a person taking two pills, mifepristone and misoprostol. She said some clinicians, including herself, are permitted to send mifepristone directly to patients. So we should be able to do this all in the mail, and we don't even need to do it online. Just a phone call. Hello, doc. Yeah. Can you send me some mifepristone and some misoprostol? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you got my address from the last abortion, right? Yeah. Okay, got it. Kaneshiro stated that in her experience, many patients opt for medication abortion because they feel more autonomy over the abortion process. More autonomy. Some patients have a strong preference to experience something akin to a miscarriage than undergo a procedure. Some patients, including those who have experienced rape or sexual abuse, choose medication abortion to avoid trauma, etc. So that's the petition for abortion. Let me check and see who I've got in my green room here. I've got Frenchie, Another Joe, and Dave Sablon. So I'm going to break the rule here, okay? I've had Frenchie and Another Joe almost every day. I don't know that I've ever had Dave Sablon. Dave Sablon is the president of the Concerned Catholics of Guam. I'm sure he is very interested in this subject and will be a very good speaker. So Dave Sablon, Frenchie, and Another Joe. Let's break for the seventh inning stretch, and then I'll get those guys on the line.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Half a day. This is Alicia Bloss from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Okay, so here we are back on Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I'm wandering around out in the center field bleachers in Wrigley Field, and who do I bump into? None other than Dave Sablon, the president of the Concerned Catholics of Guam. Dave, I hope you enjoyed your stay at Wrigley Field, but what can you tell us about the ACLU and abortion?
You know, I actually have been to Wrigley Field before we get into the subject of the abortion issue here, Bob. And I had a hot dog there out in the right field open air snack bar.
All right.
That was several years ago, and also went into the locker room and looked at all the different lockers of the different players there. It was quite an interesting tour that we took there, actually, several years ago. I was there with the Republican National Committee. When I was the national committee man of the GOP here in Guam. I also was a member of the RNC.
What a name dropper. Well,
anyway, Bob.
Yes, sir.
This is a very serious issue. And I've been following it, and I was hoping to see more news articles about it, more investigative reporting, because there's a lot of questions that have popped up. Okay, first off, disclaimer. We may be called the Concerned Catholics of Guam, our organization. We have about 3,000 people that have, supported our work. We unseated Archbishop Aparon. He's no longer here in Guam. We no longer even pay his monthly stipend, so that's good for the island. trying to clean all this evil out of this place. That's really one of our main jobs. But we're not affiliated with the Archdiocese. I want that to be very clear. We are a separate nonprofit organization. We file our taxes, our tax returns every year, even though we're a nonprofit, but we still have to report everything to the government. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so people can donate to us and they can take that tax deduction. So that being out of the way now, on this subject, a lot of questions have popped up when I first read this. First off, I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. What are these two doctors interested in this whole case? They're from Hawaii. I think we have at least a couple hundred doctors here in Guam. They're asking for telemedicine consultation to be considered part of the law here in Guam. I think that's the basis of their lawsuit being filed in court. All right. When you think about it, if a woman goes to see her doctor and says, "Look, can you give me a prescription for this abortion pill?" and the doctor writes that prescription, then she takes it to her pharmacy and gets the pill. All of this is pretty discreet. It's not made public, and it's probably not even reported to the public health. That's probably why you have no cases.
It's supposed to. By the way, it's supposed to be reported to public health, Dave. But go on.
Okay, so in any case, they can still do this, and anonymously, it gets reported, but it can still be done on this island. So is the issue here, the 200 doctors that we have here, are they not wanting to issue or prescribe this pill, or are the pharmacies not wanting to provide this pill? So we need to get these two doctors coming in from Hawaii to provide this telemedicine service. This is a big question. If it can be done discreetly, why are these two doctors interested in being part of this whole program, long distance? Second issue is, what happens if there's a problem? What doctor is going to take care of the patient, the lady, or the baby that's going to be aborted here? Okay. So these two doctors prescribe the pill, and there's an emergency because the lady gets, the female gets some allergy or something from it, and starts to convulge. Will these two doctors have someone here in Guam to take care of them? That should happen. There has to be that kind of connection, I would imagine. So I don't understand the basis of this lawsuit. The third issue is, why is the ACLU interested in this? They were not interested in the beginning when a similar issue was brought up several years ago. It was not a priority matter for them. They were more concerned with the national issue versus this, issue here on Guam that is specific to Guam only. But yet they're back now. So it begs the question, Bob, that there must be other parties that are involved in trying to push this thing forward. Aborting a baby, in our opinion, I'm talking about my organization, is evil. It is wrong, and that is the basis of any kind of argument that is brought up in favor of quote unquote pro-choice. That's it. And so to further encourage it, to provide quote unquote choice, is really providing an abortion. That's what it is, because the other choice is basically let the baby be born. Dr. Tom Shea has come out saying that if any woman wants to take her pregnancy to fruition, and that is to a birth, there will be people that will adopt the child, and provide it with a decent home and an upbringing. And I think that's really, if anything, the better choice, if you want to look at it as a choice. And that's my comment, Bob. There's something more to this issue, because all of these questions being raised as to why these two doctors are so interested in having telemedicine being part of our law. And not only that, but why don't they go to the governor and the legislature to get this thing done? Propose a bill. I don't think they need to go to the court.
Well, my analysis, Dave, is that that's exactly what they think they're doing, filing the lawsuit, propagandizing Bavacqua, et cetera, and then And then the counsel, Vanessa Williams, comes out and says, you know, we really don't need this lawsuit if the legislature would just change the law. So I see it as an attempt to try to pressure the legislature. Going back to your first point, Dave, in the complaint, they say that none of the doctors on the island will perform abortions. None of the doctors on the island would do cleanup duty in the case of a mishap with the medication abortion, which tells us then really what we have is a couple of guys from Honolulu that don't like the fact that our doctors here, unlike them, have consciences.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah. So, and then if I looked at it from the commercial standpoint, if they got this, if they were able to get this, the court order that they're looking for, or the statutory amendment that they're looking for, it'd be a profit center for them. With no doctors on the island willing to do abortion, and they can do it mail order. You know, you call up and you just call up and say, hey, doc, I need a couple of pills. Can you mail them out to me? Yeah, let me get your address. What's your credit card number again? Some really fast, easy money in a market that's wide open.
You know, is that how they view the life of a baby in the womb? That cheaply that they can do it by mail order pills? I mean, do the math, Bob. Let's say that it's about $200 to do a telemedical consultation, okay? And let's say that we have about 600 women who would like to have an abortion per year here in Guam. So that's roughly, let's say 500, okay? Because I don't think it ever went beyond that number in any given year. So let's say that's $100,000 approximately in revenue, all right? You split that between these two doctors, that's $50,000 per doctor. Is that worth their effort to try to, quote unquote, change the law on the island or change the attitude of the people?
Well,
so though you brought up the issue of profitability, I don't think it's that worth of a risk for them to go all this way, have these problems with other doctors on the island not willing to clean up the mess if anything should go wrong, for $50,000 a year revenue, not taking away any of their expenses yet.
Well, then there's another speculation with respect to the ACLU. The ACLU, I really don't think the two Hawaii doctors went to New York and pounded on the front door of the ACLU. I think what happened was somebody here contacted the ACLU and said, hey, can you help us with this statute? We got a good suit for you guys. Now that you guys don't do free speech or any of the stuff you used to do, this is right up your alley. Can you do it? And they say, yeah, we got to find us a couple of plaintiffs. We'll check Hawaii. We can probably find a couple of plaintiffs in Hawaii that would like a little bit of free advertising, et cetera. And that's how they found the two doctors. That leaves open the question, who on Guam contacted the ACLU? And this is pure speculation.
Right.
If I'm
and not only that, but somebody had to give a donation, I would imagine, to the LC, another speculative issue, in order to motivate them when several years ago they were not interested. Remember?
So who on Guam might be of a mind to contact the ACLU? Was anybody on Guam publicly, actively going out and looking for an abortionist for the island? Yeah, Jane Flores, at the order of the governor. You know, I mean, it's just speculation, but it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility, would it, Dave?
No, it would not be, and I hope that we're not spending government money now for this whole issue here. If that is the case, if that's what could very well be the issue, I just hope that we're not doing, what is the legal term, a cat's paw tactic here?
Not being a cat's paw for the ACLU. So, Dave, I think we really agree here on what the problem is and what the right thing to do is. Does the CCU have plans on demonstrating, suing, hunger strikes?
Well, we're gathering the facts. That's a fact.
Okay.
I can tell you that. I'm talking to a lot of people, trying to find what is the basis for the lawsuit of these two doctors. When I really look at it, that the easiest way is to try to lobby the legislature. Of course, they're probably not going to support this, but notwithstanding, come on out and be open about what you're trying to do here. Going through the courts, I can almost see the court, and you're an attorney, retired, I believe, but you're still a law person. Do you think something like this is something that the judge would look at that and say, there are other avenues in administrative release that could occur here. You need to come to us for this kind of relief. What do you think about that?
Probably not. You got a separation of powers dimension, and judges are very reluctant to suggest what another branch should do. They don't have any problem telling another branch what to do. But no, I think that this battle will be won in the court of public opinion, Dave.
Yeah. But shouldn't the judge look at the fact and say, what other remedies have you tried through the executive? Of course, we know that there may have been some effort in that regard years ago to try to change the law. What about any effort on the part of the legislature?
No,
don't you think the judge would look at that before makes a decision?
There would be no exhaustion or remedies requirement here.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave, I got a couple more guys in the green room.
All right, very good. Good talking with you, Bob. I'll be listening again.
Okay, thanks for calling, Dave.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to Churchill Downs and get ready for the home stretch. I got Frenchie and another Joe to help me on the home stretch today.
Looking for a place to celebrate this Valentine's Day? Treat your special someone to Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña. Enjoy their Sweethearts menu that comes with complimentary sparkling wine, house wine, or draft beer, and a choice of 3 tantalizing set menus created by Master Chef Peter Dueñas, and an irresistible warm melting chocolate lava cake with creamy vanilla ice cream. Let Mezcla serve you up a memorable evening with the true taste of Guam. Call Mezcla at 479-2652 or 3. Limited seating available.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more. On demand. Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Well, we're off to the races, Frenchie, here at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. So you wanted to change the subject back to sustainable energy?
Well, not automatically back, because when I was waiting patiently in the green room, which is perfect for sustainability, we are in the green industry now. So the green room is very well named. And you started talking about Bevacqua. I was thinking, well, Bevacqua, and his group like Protehi, what's the name of it?
Protehi Latexin, yeah.
Latexin, when it comes to the military, they're all for environmental safety and blah, blah, blah. And there, I'm surprised that Bevacqua is not talking as an argument to the court that the carbon print of those women having to go to Hawaii is very high, because they're taking the plane. But then that would bring the fact that he takes the plane all the time to go to Puerto Rico, the UN in New York, and all those things. So his carbon imprint is not very good either. So, but that shows that they are talking from both sides of their mouths. They're talking about environmental issue when it fits their agenda, but not when it doesn't. So looking back at the sustainability on Guam, they're basically talking about solar and wind. And when you look at those two alternatives, which at first hand I have nothing against, is you have to look at how is it built, how is it operated, and when it is the end of their lifetime, how is it recycled, right? Because we want to look at all the impact it has on the environment. And the fact is that both solar panels and the solar panel industry is a very polluting industry. It's a very dirty process to build solar panels, and Eolian, while it's not too dirty, they are now using composite material, which are not the cleanest thing either. Originally, when it was in its infancy, it was metal blades, but now they're using composites to make the blades for the windmills. And the other things that you need to do that is generators, and generators, you need quite a lot of them, and converters for the solar issues. So those industries are not clean. Now, of course, we don't see that side of it because most of it is manufactured in China, which has the highest pollution rating in the world, and that's one of their issues. And talking about energy sovereignty, like this young man was talking about, we have no sovereignty at all if 80% of the market is cornered by China. So it's totally self-canceling arguments. On top of it, so now in order to exploit those solar farms or wind farms, you have to see what kind of impact it has on the island. Well, solar farm needs very large acreage in order to produce a small amount of energy, and of course that has direct impact on the fauna and on the flora of the island. And we, as many people like to remind us, we are sorry, but the F-35 is flying over my house. They have a huge impact on the small island. Those big farms actually have been known to have negative impact on local flora and fauna. So again, if you're going to be for green energy, then this is not the best way to look at it. And we have known the many studies on Eolian capabilities and the impact that they have on birds flying around, and we have hundreds of thousands of birds every year that are killed by those very large blades when they turn. So finally, and because we are an island, we have to think about the recycling of those products. Well, the number one issue with the windmill blades is that at this time, there is nobody that recycle those windmill blades made out of composite material. There hasn't been anything. So basically, if you go through Iowa, Nebraska, and all those places where they have a lot of wind farms, they are ending up with tons and tons, mountains of blades from those windmills that are sitting there doing nothing. And the only thing that they have right now is to make big holes and bury those blades in the ground. So not the most environmentally conscious issues. Then, of course, you have the same issue with the solar power. What do you do with solar power when their life cycle is over? And so far, there is also no recycling of solar power. So we already have an issue with cars not being recycled properly on this island, and it is a major issue that nobody is addressing. But if you go a step further, electrical car, there was a German study that showed that an electrical car, because of battery issues, battery is one of the most dirty industry to make. I mean, there are rivers in China that are green, orange, and every color in the book, and I have not seen a fish in decades. and where the high rate of cancer for Chinese people is just mind-boggling. But so they have counted that the electrical car is 6 times more polluting than a diesel car over its lifetime because of the things we don't see upriver, which is the very, very polluting effect of those industries. So they want us to go lock and barrel on an industry which sounds good, you know, wind and sun, it sounds clean, but actually they are not addressing issues upriver and downriver, which is the recycling of all those issues, and how it is going to have an impact on a small island like Guam. Where are we going to put those blades?
Let me jump in here for a second, if I can, Frenchie. These are all very good points. I would direct you back, though, to Agarin's letter, and he is working on a master's degree in sustainability at American University in D.C. So the object is not to give rise to anything that makes that suggests a sensible alternative or a viable way to deal with the problems we're dealing with right now. The goal is to write papers for your professor that uses all of the right buzzwords in the right places. And I think that he finished his last paper and thought, well, I could do the same thing, send it off to the Guam Daily Post. I think that's what we were reading.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Do you think I got time to squeeze in another Joe here just before the final curtain? Would that be okay, Jose?
Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, Frenchie?
Okay, bye.
Okay, good talking to you. You got about 1 minute, another Joe. You called in
All
a
right,
little
well,
late.
let's done 30 seconds maybe. All right. So the Senate voted, I think, 56 to 44 to continue the impeachment and I don't know what they call it, process. So they went into, I guess, recess until tomorrow. So we'll see what kind of hijinks they come up with. Regarding Dr. Michael Buck, who I think he might be a distant relative. He seems like a nice guy to talk to in person, but I have to say I disagree. I'm pro-life. He's obviously pro-choice. But I am kind of curious as to his realization, his justification, because I've never ever heard any of my elders, anyone uncle, come out as pro-choice. And I don't know, you're older than I am, Bob. Have you ever seen local elders born in, I don't know, the earlier decades come out in the pro-choice stance?
I would just say one word, two words before we close, and if I remember, I'll explain tomorrow. Dr. Darling.
Ooh.
Okay.
Bob.
See you tomorrow.
We're here
Okay.
tomorrow. Take care.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
One person is dead, 4 others are wounded in a shooting at a Minnesota health clinic, and a local man said to have been angry with the care he received was arrested.
He's 67-year-old Gregory Ulrich, who's known to police and who's accused of opening fire just before 11 a.m. inside Buffalo, Minnesota's Alina Health Clinic, injuring 5 people before he was taken into custody.
We're not looking for any additional suspects. We believe that he acted alone.
Wright County Sheriff Sean Derringer, a suspicious package and devices also found inside the clinic, as well as a local motel where we're told the suspect was staying.
Fox's Jeff Manosso. President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Treasury Secretary Yellen met with leading business executives at the White House yesterday to discuss the administration's economic relief package.
President Biden is brainstorming ways to help low-wage workers hurt by the COVID-19 economy with the heads of giants like Walmart, The Gap, and J.P. Morgan.
American people are hurt. There's a lot of people are in real trouble.
And Biden thinks it would help to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, something the CBO projects could lift 900,000 people out of poverty, but eliminate 1.4 million jobs. There are also questions about who qualifies for a full $1,400 stimulus check. House Democrats favor sending them to individuals making up to $75,000 a year.
That's Fox's Peter Ducey. Could another top quarterback potentially be hitting the NFL trade market this offseason?
Speaking of Fox Sports Radio Tuesday, Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson was asked about a report from CBS Sports claiming the Seahawks had taken phone calls